Today, I want to talk about what the president really does not want, and that is for Iran to ever get a nuclear weapon. From day one of this conflict, the president has made it clear that allowing Iran to acquire atomic bombs would be one of the greatest threats to the U.S., our allies, and global peace. The president is not just fighting a war. He is preventing a nuclear-armed regime with deep hostility toward America from ever threatening our homeland or our partners. This is why he has demanded that Iran permanently stop all uranium enrichment and never be allowed to build a bomb. He's pushing Iran not just to stop its nuclear program, but to ensure that they cannot weaponize it in the future, because a nuclear-armed Iran would dramatically increase the chances of nuclear blackmail, regional arms races, and catastrophic war in the Middle East. The president wants a safe world where no hostile power holds the deadliest weapons on earth, and that is why he is standing strong against Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Had I not terminated that deal, you would have had a nuclear weapon years ago and it would have been used, guaranteed. And one of the reasons you know about the guarantee is because their neighbors were sort of like bystanders. They weren't involved very much. They didn't choose heavy sides. They didn't want to because people were concerned with Iran. There was a big black cloud over the Middle East.
It's good to see everybody. Proud to be part of this team. Proud to be serving the president of the country. Let me just say a couple things. The first of all is the president summarized this very ably. But look, the Iranian conventional military is effectively destroyed. They don't have a navy. They don't have the ability to hit us like they could have even a few weeks ago. And what that does is that gives us options, Mr. President. Now, there's been a lot of reporting about diplomatic options, about negotiations. There's, of course, Pete and his team. There are further military options. But what we have now that we didn't have when the president took over just a little over a year ago is the ability to use every tool at our disposal to ensure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. Because when I say options, I think it's important the American people know options for what? And it's options to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, people.
The president outlined very clearly to the world on the night this operation began, Iran has been at war with the United States for 47 years. For 47 years, Iran has been killing Americans and attacking Americans across this planet. And other presidents had an opportunity to do something about it. And they all warned about how Iran was dangerous, but they refused to act.
Let us get real about what is at stake with Iran, and why multiple politicians on both sides of the aisle have sounded the same alarm long before this president ever took office. In one of my previous videos, I showed clips of Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and other leaders all saying that a nuclear-armed Iran is unacceptable and would pose a serious threat to the United States and our allies, that it could spark an arms race in the Middle East and embolden terrorists. So if Iran was not really dangerous, why were people like Clinton and Biden saying basically the same thing decades ago? These are not fringe opinions. They were mainstream warnings from experienced politicians who understood how catastrophic it would be if a hostile regime like Iran's were allowed atomic bomb capabilities. The president does not want Iran to get a nuclear weapon not because of politics, but because history and global leaders have repeatedly explained just how destabilizing and risky that would be. And remember this. Preventing Iran from getting nukes is about protecting our national security, our allies, and keeping the world safer.
I'll start kind of where you left off, Mr. President. Thank you for doing the work of the free world and having the courage to step up and stop the Iranian terror regime from holding the world hostage. That's really what it is. And 27 days ago, Iran had a modern military. Never in recorded history has a nation's military been so quickly and effectively neutralized. Operation Epic Fury is not an endless war. It's a decisive campaign with clear objectives to destroy Iran's offensive military capabilities and ensure they never obtain a nuclear weapon. This is stuff for the history books. This is stuff for legacy. Mr. President, you are acting now to ensure future generations do not have to live under the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. However, you wouldn't know it if you listened to the dishonest hate Trump media, as you referenced. The folks here in the room, these cameras, they have a choice. You're either informing the American people of the truth or you're not. Because I hear it from my people every day. Behind every headline you write, there's a helicopter crew in the air. And behind every news banner you write, there's a battalion on the move. And behind every fake news story, there's an F-35 pilot executing a dangerous mission. My message to the media is get it right. This actually isn't something new to me. Maybe a young guy, Mr. President, but I'm not a rookie in this realm. In 2007, I helped lead the surge, the public fight for the Iraq surge. Stood and watched people stand in the Senate and declare the war is lost before it even started. Who was that? It was Harry Reid. That was the Democrats and the media working hand in glove. Back then, it was 3 years into a war. Now we're 3 weeks into an operation. But see, unlike Iraq, this isn't a tie. This is not parity. This is not chaos.
Do not forget to turn on notifications so you are the first to catch my latest videos breaking down the news the way it really is. Your support helps keep these conversations going. So subscribe, share, and join the discussion today. Listen to what Pete Hegseth said today. He talked about how, if you only listen to what he called the dishonest, hate Trump media, you would get a completely different version of reality. And that got me thinking about something we have all lived through over the last 2 elections. Go back to 2016 when Donald Trump won. Many major media voices spent years talking about Russian interference, questioning the legitimacy of the outcome, and debating whether the election had been influenced in ways the public did not fully understand. Now fast forward to 2020 when Joe Biden won. Those same outlets were emphasizing that the election process was secure, that there was no widespread fraud, and that Americans should trust the system. So here is the question. How can the tone be so different depending on who wins? Why was skepticism amplified in one election and dismissed in the other? I am going to show you 2 clips back to back. One from when Trump won in 2016, and another from when Biden won in 2020.
So when you say they're not wrong, I want to ask you specifically, look, some of them had said they would come out and not come before Congressman Lewis, but there is no doubt that when he came out and said that Trump was not a legitimate president, that is when we started seeing people come out in scores and saying, we're not coming. He said that Trump is not a legitimate president because he says the Russians participated in helping Trump get elected.
The Justice Department's National Security Division is overseeing the Russian hacking case.
Once they're doing that keystroke monitoring.
Assistant Attorney General John Demers runs the division, along with deputies Adam Hickey and Sean Newell. DOJ attorney Heather Alpino worked with Special Counsel Mueller on the Russian indictments. All have access to the underlying intelligence and have no doubt the Russians interfered in the 2016 election.
About Russian efforts to contact Hope Hicks. What do you make of this continued effort to permeate President Trump's inner circle?
Well, without getting the specifics of that allegation, we do know that the Russians throughout the campaign were making outreach to the campaign. They continue that during the transition.
That the election was plagued with massive fraud and somehow stolen. You'll remember what the president's own attorney general, Bill Barr, said he told the president about these claims of massive fraud affecting the outcome of the election.
Washington President Trump is once again pushing the debunked claim that the 2020 election was rigged.
When you step back and look at all of this, the clips from 2016, the clips from 2020, what politicians said back then, and what the media says now, one thing becomes very clear. The narrative changes depending on who is in power. In 2016, questioning the election and talking about foreign interference was treated as serious, urgent, and worth years of coverage. In 2020, questioning the election was treated as dangerous, irresponsible, and something that should not be discussed. So the real issue here is not just about Trump, Biden, or any one election. It is about consistency. It is about whether the standards stay the same, no matter who wins. Because when the rules for what is acceptable to question change based on politics, people do not just lose trust in politicians, they lose trust in the media itself. And once that trust is gone, it is very hard to get back. That is why it is important to look at the facts, look at the history, and decide for yourself, not based on headlines, but based on what was actually said, then and now. Thanks for watching. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any future reactions. Share this video with friends and family. They need to see what is really happening too. Also, drop a comment below with your thoughts. I want to hear what you think about the media then versus now. And do not forget to turn on notifications so you are the first to catch my latest videos breaking down the news the way it really is. Your support helps keep these conversations going. So subscribe, share, and join the discussion today.